stay focused. You gotta stay focused.
DJ T Real, you made this one.
Go ahead and take the leap. Let them get their beauty sleep. Get up and win ugly. Get the lesson while you reap. You are not behind. As suspense is well timed. Gotta shift the storyline. Gotta shift your narrative. Like all your cars decline. Come out the negative. You gotta change your mind. You are seen. You are noticed. Royalty at best you're chosen. Question all your motives. Keep moving locomotive. Even when you lack the motivation, stay focused. Don't believe in hocus pocus. This ain't magic or a notion. Cause even at your lowest, he'll love you when you broken. And don't worry about the pressure or the hate. Just look at Joseph. Wrapped in scripture like you coded. Every time you load, you quote it. Filled with word like you bloated. Authority like you bloating. Try to shrink you like a quotient. Increase your level of devotion. It's forever, not a moment. Gotta trust them, gotta own it. Used to reek of lost dreams. Now I smell like self-esteem. Underground or mainstream. Focus on my A streams. Can no longer have my voice if it's music or it's noise. This lifestyle is a choice. Every lie they built destroyed.
What's good? It's your girl, Conchetta Cherie, back with another episode of Don't Hit Snooze, the podcast. I am so excited. I can't even hide it. I was not trying to rhyme it, but here we are. Anywho, we are on video. So if you are listening to this pod from whatever platform you usually listen to it from, go ahead, slide over to YouTube because your girl got a video up. Yeah. In lieu of my 50th episode, this one right here, I am challenging myself to step out of my comfort zone to do things that I don't want to do or that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but just haven't. Whatever the case may be, it is what it is, and it's getting done. It's gonna happen. So here we are with this video for the 50th episode. Now, I will say that I have my notes here and I have an outline, but typically I like to have way more in front of me and I'm sitting at a desk. I'm not super comfortable because like right now I'm really not even comfortable. My ankle actually hurt. And y'all, I'm just going to start by saying this. It's a Sunday when I'm recording this and I was laid out at church today. And while I was laid out, I wasn't like on my back or on my belly. I was bent like on my knees and my legs were tucked underneath me. So by the time I got up, my ankles were out of commission. And one of our like associate pastors, she was like, "Do you need to sit down?" I said, "Girl, yes, please help," because I already felt like super, I don't even know. It was a different feeling that I had. And I really just want to be the person that I see in my head. And if you are anything like me, where you know what you see, but you don't see her in real time, and you're working toward that, but it's like the gap needs to shrink. The gap needs to decrease in order for you to really get closer to being that person. So right now the gap is not what I would want it to be. Now I'm not going to say that the gap will ever disappear because you're always becoming, you're always learning and growing and evolving and elevating. So I'm not worried about that gap per se in totality, but for right now, I do feel like the gap is too wide for my liking. So as the days progress, as the months progress, and child, if we still here on this here earth, if the Lord ain't came back yet, as the years progress, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But I want to say right now, I am looking forward to showing up as her as much and as often as I can. And in the times where I just don't have it, I just won't have it, and I'm not gonna force it. But right now, I do feel like this is the time. And yeah, I'm not gonna force myself to be like, oh, I feel like I could have started a long time ago, or do all of that. It's too Debbie Downer for me in the space that I'm in right now. And I'm so glad that I had the moment that I had. And I'm very thankful for my church family. I'm so thankful just for the people that are in my life currently that hold or occupy a really great or like big space in my life and in my heart. And one of the biggest things that I've really been wanting and seeking God about is Him connecting my head to my heart. And it was something that I had already known, but He laid it on my pastor's heart. And I hadn't said anything to this man. He is my spiritual father, and I did not tell him that part. And he came to me, which is how I knew. And I'll tell you guys this part. The reason that I also knew it was time today for the deliverance that took place, for all the things that happened at church after service. So after prayer, I honestly don't know when there was dismissal. I didn't hear that part, if we ever officially dismissed that way. Because sometimes you just don't. When you're in the spirit and it's that high, sometimes, you don't do the dismissal like that. So anyway, I don't know what happened, but I do know that I prayed. And I said, God, if you want this to happen today, if you want me to go up to the altar, if it's time, I need you to tell me to come on. Do y'all know that my pastor locked eyes with me and was like, come on? I'm sorry, what? Took me out, sent me. So I know that was God. And I feel it, and I just really believe God for us. I'm believing God for myself, but I really believe God for the people that are listening, for the people that are watching. You know that you have something that the world needs, and it's time. There is no other person that can do it but you. There is no other person that can say the things that you need to say and how you will say them. It's time to execute. And I want to tell you guys the origin of the pod. Because originally, back in, I want to say 2018, 2019, I was starting to think, and the percolation of a podcast was really stirring in my spirit. And I was already in the process of building out this spoken word ministry at my church at the time. And so speaking and being on camera was like a regular thing at that point. And I was also doing church announcements and just all these different things that was preparing me for different moments. It would, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, wow, yeah, that prepared me for that and that prepared me for that. So when I go back and look at all the chain links, I'm like, wow. So at that time, it was percolating, but it wasn't necessarily something that I was feeling ready to do. But ever ready, really, are you? Who knows if anybody is ever like, yes, let's go. Power to you if you are ever in that space when it's time for you to do something. But I know over here, I'd be like, ooh, God, are you sure? And even if I'm not questioning, it's still a matter of like, I feel like it could have been better, or, fill in the blank. So at that point in 2019, I started to consider the name of the podcast, and I came up with all these different episodes. And I literally put in my notes enough episodes for the whole year. I wrote out topics for 52 weeks. And I gave the name of it Royal Minders Radio. And I did start some of the process of putting stuff out on social media and those types of things, but it was not working. It was like, girl, you getting traction, but this is not it. And I don't like to continue to do stuff if it's not sitting right with my spirit. And I was just like, I feel like I'm falling off on every single thing that I'm doing, but it was because it just wasn't sitting right. Like, I would start something and I'm like, why did I even do that? And I knew that I needed to do a pod. Like, I knew that was the assignment, but I didn't feel like that was it. I didn't know if it was because of the name or how I was going about it or the people that I felt like I was talking to. You can say that I had a target audience whole time, but at the same time, I really don't feel like, even now, I'm like, I think I'm talking to single moms and people with ADHD. Who knows? But whoever is resonating, honestly. So Christian, non-Christian, I am a believer, but like, I talk to who's listening. So either way, 2020 came and obviously we know what took place. But as I was by myself, I was putting out different things because I had just published a book. So it was like continuing with those different things, sending out the copies to people, signing them, and doing those little vlogs here and there, and all the things that were leading up to me getting pregnant. And after I got pregnant, I started dating a different person than my child's father. I tried with him, and that's a whole nother conversation for a different day. But the man that I ended up with, he was very encouraging, and the whole podcast thing came back around. So now this is probably 2 years after my baby is born, and she was born in 2021, so it had to be like early 2023 or maybe like late 2022. Either way, if I go back in my notes, I could confirm all of this. But essentially, I started telling him about the pod idea, and he was all for it. And that was the start of Don't Hit Snooze. And I remember back when I first started Royal Minders Radio, I was in a studio apartment the size of my current bathroom. When I started Don't Hit Snooze and percolating those thoughts and getting my notes down and all of that, his apartment where we were is the size of my now bedroom. The whole apartment. So my whole apartment from the original thought, size of my bathroom. Whole apartment with him before we moved into this place. Whole apartment size of my bedroom. And now I have to say my because it was our bedroom. But he passed away. He did take his own life back in 2023. And this part of my life is me developing into this new version of myself that's not attached to him, but then still keeping parts of him within this journey. And I've talked to my best friend's girlfriend, so my male best friend from high school. He introduced me to his girlfriend, and I mean, I had been talking to her via FaceTime here and there, but she finally came over, and she's a therapist, and so she was just talking to me about some different things, and that was one of the things that really resonated with me. And I really appreciate everything that she poured out and into me just in the little bit of time that we were speaking, because I mean, therapists get paid for that, so I really appreciate any type of person that allows for their professionalism to be used, or for me to use their professionalism or their profession rather, in a capacity where they're not asking me to pay them or they're not even seeking anything in return. It's just like, well, I'm good at this, so here's what you need. And I believe that it was a thing from God, honestly, because I tend to feel like I'm always pouring into other people, but then I'm like, well, when is it gonna be my turn? When is somebody gonna pour into me? I give all of these things for free. I give all of these things out of the kindness of my heart. Like, when is somebody gonna be kind to me? You know, when is somebody going to? Dang. The reality is, when you're a single mom, you take the opportunities that come. When your village wants to watch the baby, you let the village watch the baby. So I am fully tired. It is now 9:38 at night. I had to go pick up my baby, put her to bed, and all the things. So it's cold now in this little spot. I have to drape the cover over me a little bit. But essentially, what I was saying was pretty much the journey that led me to today. And today, present time, I'm celebrating my 50th episode. And it was really exciting for me. It's still really exciting for me, but I'm white. This is called it's bigger than a why for me. And I can't even fathom why a tear would well up. I don't cringe or think it's cringe for people to cry online, but I don't see that for myself. Yet it's happening. If it happens all the way, I'm just gonna let it happen because it's been all sorts of things that have transpired today that I never would have thought I would be okay with. So 50. For a lot of people, the 50th birthday, for example, is huge. Half a century? Excuse me. What? And I looked it up. 50 means jubilee or celebration. And of course, for me, it was more so, okay, what does this mean biblically? I'm actually going to pull it up because the way my brain is set up right now, we don't got time for that. So, the Hebrew word rashabam, which is in Strong's Concordance number H7346, is written 50 times in 41 Hebrew Old Testament verses. It is found in only 3 books: Second Chronicles, First Kings, and First Chronicles. I don't know why I listed Second Chronicles first. Okay. The word, which means a people has enlarged, is translated as the name Rehoboam. Now, if you know Rehoboam, Rehoboam is David's grandson, King Solomon, who was the greatest king and wisest. Well, he was the wisest king. We'll say that. That was his son. Though things were promised to that bloodline, Rehoboam was disobedient. So he didn't get the full promise. He wanted to do his own thing. And I can't really play back the full story in my head, but what that said to me is in this season, it's really time for us to be obedient to what God has called us to, because we don't have time to play. We don't have time to see the wrath of God. We don't have time to see anything other than the promises of God. And we know that the promises of God are yes and amen. So if I'm saying yes, it is so. Amen means it is so. I am in agreement. I am going to do what you told me to do so that I can see your promises. But not just for that reason, I also want to be pleasing to you. Like, I want to smell good to you. I want you to be filled with glee when you think of me, your daughter. This daughter of God is pleasing to you because I am obedient. I do what you tell me to do. And in turn, lives are affected for the better. When I was in church today, another thing that was said was around this idea of God being pleased with you. But there was a word that my pastor used. But essentially, it's like you're making God smile. based on how you're showing up. By being who he told you to be, you're pleasing to him. You're pleasing in his sight. I also have been studying holiness again because I haven't felt this far away from holiness in a long time. And not because I'm doing a certain thing. Part of it was, but it was really because of this idea of like, I know that God's presence and holiness is one and the same. And some of the things that I think, or some of the things I might say, or some of the things that I do or don't do cannot be one and the same with holiness. And so it's like, well, I want God's presence. God, I want your presence. So how can I have a life and live a life that you can dwell in? Yeah. I was going to continue on, which I do want to read this part, right? About Jesus. Because ultimately, that's what it boils down to. And in the New Testament, the word Pentecost comes from the Greek word for 50th, which is Pentecoste. Don't give me the line. Also known as the Feast of Weeks or First Fruits. It was on this special holy day that God first poured his Holy Spirit upon about 120 believers who had gathered to keep the day. They became the first fruits of God's spiritual harvest of humans. Interestingly, the Greek word glossa, Strong's Concordance number G 1100, is recorded 50 times in the original Greek in the New Testament. Although it is found the most in 1 Corinthians, it is most importantly used in the book of Acts in relation to Pentecost. And for me, again, this whole idea of 50, the product of 2 times 5 times 5, or 5 squared. 2 times 5 squared? Right, because 5 squared is 25, 25 times. I said that right. Okay. Anywho, the biggest one here, and I didn't even see this until right now. And I thank God because I'm scrolling. I'm like, Lord, I want to make a point here. Bow, bow. So as I mentioned, ooh, I'm not going to cry. I am not going to cry on this here video. As I mentioned, there were some things that took place at church, and essentially it was deliverance, right? And as I'm scrolling and asking God in my heart, I'm not saying it out loud to y'all because I'm just talking. We chit-chatting right now. But I'm praying on the inside, like, Lord, I want to wrap this up and make a point. The point is, the number 50 also symbolizes deliverance. For freedom from a burden. That is wild. Ooh. God commanded ancient Israel that every 50th year on the Day of Atonement, that a jubilee was to be declared with the sound of a trumpet. Now, I'm trying to stop moving so much because I have no idea what the sound is going to sound like. I am outdone. God is so intentional. For that to happen on today, in this episode that I was planning to film, marks my 50th episode. You cannot tell me that God is not real. You cannot tell me that God is not in the details. He absolutely is. If you abide in him, he abides in you. Period. Like, that's all I got to say about that. we're gonna move on though. I remember my mom's 50th birthday. I'll say this. This is how all of it kind of came together, and it's the details for me. I threw a surprise 50th birthday for my mom, and her color of choice happens to be the color that I've chosen recently as one of the main brand colors for my rebrand for the pod. And that takes me into this whole notion of darkness to light. And one of the other things that I talked to my best friend's girlfriend about was this idea around the connotation behind certain words. And obviously, there's a negative connotation to darkness. But she was just talking about how we often live in a space of trying to avoid that because of the negative connotation instead of embracing it to be a part of the journey. And I agree. And I also considered this rebrand from all of the darkness and literal dark colors and dark branding that I use to this light, airy, cutesy, simplified, just all the things. The journey from that to this has been insane. And it literally has been me coming from a dark space to coming to a light place. And it's not just light or like the light of God, the light of Christ, but feeling light. So going back to that feeling of having a burden lifted, like that definition was spot on. Deliverance, freedom from a burden. Talk about it. And God's word says that his yoke is light. We give him our burden, and though in a yoke, like with oxen, the weight is even on both sides. When we give him the weight, when we give him our burden, it's even. Because he said that it ain't ours. That's not ours to keep. I gave it all back, and I'm going to continue to give it back. And what I want you to remember here is, if you are a believer, deliverance is a continual process. It's a continual journey. So I don't know if he's going to send me to the altar tomorrow or next week or next month. I don't know when I'm going to truly hear him to do that. But I, again, don't want to move without him. And so I felt led to move. So how all of this just came together was unbeknownst to me. That ain't nowhere in my notes. It just all was revealed right now. So I'm very thankful. And I'm also thankful for this idea of moving from this masculine space to a more feminine, because I really want to embrace that. And I've run away from it in this like rebellion state of mine almost. And it's not really rebellious in a sense that, let me explain, because I really don't think I'm choosing the correct word here. But I'm not trying to throw my late fiance under the bus, but just like any relationship, we had our issues. So I'm not trying to paint the perfect picture, but I'm also not trying to paint him like a villain. It was just a relationship, period. Like it had its ups and its downs. And one of the things that he used to tell me is that I was very masculine. And now I have not heard that from a lot of people. I do tend to reflect. And when I have reflected on myself and all of my ups and downs as of late for the past few years, I have been in a more masculine state, but I know that a large part of it has been because of me playing a role of a single mom. And if you feel like this as a mom, or a lot of times I hear people tell me that they are married or that they know of a person being married but they're still single mom. That's crazy to me. But God bless you. I'm praying for all the married single moms out there. Honestly, that sounds like a crazy ride. But either way, you become more masculine because that's the role that you have to take on. Sometimes unknowingly, but sometimes like, I have to put this hat on, I have to put these pants on, I have to put these boots on because there's no, like, the only protector that I have is God. But that doesn't mean that when I go out into the world, I'm not going to be tried. So I have to put on a face, I have to put on a demeanor. Part of my personality has to be like this. And some people may not embrace that. Some people may still live in their feminine even as a single mom, but that wasn't my story. I took on what I needed to take on for me, especially because I had been hurt by my child's father. I was going through a lot of things that just put me in this place where I felt defensive, and it just was what it was. I have wanted to come out of that for so long, but I also fought it because I'm like, he's wrong. Like, why would he say it like that, as if it's my fault that I've been pushed to this masculine space, that I've had to play this masculine role. Or even if he's not wrong, why would he say that to me? Again, it's not my fault. But it is. I chose that. I didn't say, you know what, God, I am going to continue to live a soft life in you. So I want that. I want to be soft. This is me embracing my soft girl era, my soft woman era, my soft life in Christ. And as I reflect, it's really, and y'all, I listen back. One of my strengths is being able to support others in certain capacities, especially with speaking. I have been doing public speaking for quite some time, so I'm able to catch myself as well. And one of the words that I was using a lot when I listened back or watched the video back was really, and I was cringing. And so I just said it again, so I cringed a little bit. But that's just one of those things that sometimes we do and people may not even notice. So now you guys are going to notice, which is going to cause me to be even more thoughtful around the things that I say from this point forward, because I just brought attention to it. And sometimes we bring attention to things that didn't necessarily need attention brought to them. But sometimes, oh, sometimes we do need attention brought to a thing. And I'm so glad that, though it was pissing me off when I first heard it, that was brought to my attention, that I had embraced a masculine role, that I was living in my masculine more often than not. And I could throw on a fit and look girly, but the energy that I was exuding was very much like I wish it would. Okay, I wish, and I don't. Mm-mm. I've spent so much of my life being angry, being on the defense. I don't get time for that. I am pushing myself to embrace softness. And I've said this to somebody recently, how there's somebody that goes to my church who's really feminine. She's so like, I'm like, sometimes I wish I could do that. I wish I could be that way. And it kind of felt like, okay, well, maybe you're just meant to be who you are and it's okay. Like, God send the people that are for you in whatever capacity they're going to be for you by showing up how you've been showing up, if that's really you. But I'm like, part of it is I know I'm always going to be rough around the edges. I'm from the west side of Chicago. What did you think? But what I'm saying is, even in that, I don't have to be on the defense. I don't have to live in my masculine. And I'm so thankful for this podcast. I was dog tired, like I said, and just thinking about this pod got me to moving. Thinking about this pod every morning when I know I need to post. Before it was Mondays and Fridays. Y'all might still get a Friday episode, but it's looking real slim to none on those chances because it takes a lot to do video, and I already knew this. But if I do a bonus episode, it may likely be only audio. No big deal, right? But what I'm focused on right now is not just my why, but what's my don't hit snooze? What's something that when my alarm goes off, which I typically don't wake up with an alarm, but the whole idea is when I wake up, what's something that's going to really push me out of bed? And right now, it's this pod. And last week, I mentioned all of the listeners from all over the world, all over the world. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you now for watching. Thank you for being a supporter. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for all the other 49 episodes. No matter how many episodes in between that I would take a break and this and that and all the things, y'all have been here. And one of the most listened to episodes is the one about, like, pretty much the one that I recorded right after my fiance had passed. Oh Lord, please help me, because I know there is somebody else out there for me, and I, as much as I plan to fully embrace this journey while still incorporating some parts of my late fiance, I know that I'm going to have to not be in that for a long time moving. Like, at some point, that version of me has to go. If I believe that there is somebody else out there for me, I can no longer hold on to him, and that is so scary for me. But if you are wanting to do something different, you need to find your don't hit snooze. Find something that's going to get you out of bed. And maybe you've already found that something, but you're afraid of it. And you might be afraid of it because you know that's the thing. Stop being afraid. Just do it. Just get up. Just live that thing out. It might feel scary, but some of the worst things that could have ever happened have already happened to you. So you don't have anything to lose. And failure, now that I really understand what failure is, it's one of the best things that can ever happen. A flop, a fail, a true L is just a lesson. And I know we hear that all the time, but that's really what it is, because it shows you everything that you did that you can improve upon. It even shows you the things that you did well. I think that's it for this episode. I don't want to hold y'all. I know that this one has to be longer than some of my most recent ones, but I feel good about that because I had a lot of people tell me that some of my episodes were getting shorter, so they weren't necessarily able to, listen all the way on their commute to work and things like that. So I pray that this episode touched your heart. I pray that you truly find your light, that you find your don't hit snooze, that you push past anything that's been trying to defeat you and let God lift that burden from you. Give yourself the opportunity to truly be free, to truly feel light, so that you can finally be the light. And I will talk to you in the next one. Y'all just looking at my camera, I'm so excited! Happy 50 to me. Happy 50 to me. Happy 50. Happy 50. Happy 50 to us. Love y'all. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're walking away feeling empowered, encouraged, and ready to level up, even if it's just one small step at a time, because that's what counts. 1% greater every day. And remember, this journey is about doing it for God, for your legacy, and for you. And we're in this together. So whether you're a mom in the thick of it or a woman on the come up, just know that you've got community here. Don't hit snooze on your greatness. Don't hit snooze on you. And definitely don't hit snooze on God. Let's keep pushing, keep praying, keep growing. And I'll see you in the next one.
Sure did. You live in my room, you could shut up. All right, now I gotta do another test. Oh my God.